In the late 1990s, watching a movie at home required a physical journey. You had to drive to a brick-and-mortar store, browse the shelves, and bring a plastic case back to your car. Blockbuster controlled this market. They managed 9,000 stores and employed 60,000 people to maintain a physical inventory of VHS tapes and video games across the country. This business model prioritized geographic proximity and financial penalties. Accessing content meant traveling to a specific building, and keeping that content past a set deadline resulted in a fee. Reed Hastings experienced this friction firsthand when he was charged a $40 late fee for a single movie rental. Hastings looked at the mechanics of the industry and saw a system that punished its own users to manage its inventory turnover. He saw an alternative in the emerging DVD format. These discs were thin and light enough to be sent through the mail, allowing customers to order movies online and receive them in their own mailboxes. The company began as an attempt to solve this specific point of consumer frustration by bypassing the storefront model entirely. In 1997, Netflix operated out of a cramped office filled with bulky CRT monitors and cluttered desks. Their team was small, and their technology was limited by the hardware of the era. While the storefront was a website, the actual operation was manual. Employees spent days taking digital orders, finding the correct plastic discs, and hand-packing them into envelopes. The United States Postal Service functioned as their primary delivery infrastructure. Every movie rented required a mail carrier to physically move it from a warehouse to a customer's home. Their existence as an internet company was tethered to the constraints of physical logistics and the speed of the mail. This chart shows their early economic reality. Shipping costs and overhead were high, but customer volume remained flat. Giving away free DVDs and launching marketing stunts only increased the money lost per customer without improving retention. Without a way to make the math work, the company was on a trajectory toward bankruptcy. By the year 2000, the dot-com bubble burst. Investors pulled their money out as stock prices for internet companies plummeted to zero. Venture capital disappeared overnight. For a company like Netflix that was already losing money, the market crash meant they had no way to raise more funds to keep operating. The crash forced a choice. They had to find a buyer immediately or prepare to shut down the company. Reed Hastings flew to Dallas, Texas to meet with Blockbuster's leadership. He was there to offer them the company he had built. On one side of the boardroom sat executives representing a multi-billion-dollar corporation. On the other sat two founders whose company was weeks away from running out of cash. Hastings made his pitch. Blockbuster could buy Netflix for $50 million. The Blockbuster executives actually laughed at the offer. They viewed the online rental model as a niche interest and saw no reason to invest in a competitor they believed was irrelevant. 10 years after that meeting, Blockbuster declared bankruptcy. To the leadership in that room, the digital shift appeared to be a joke, right up until the moment it ended their business. At its peak, Blockbuster commanded 9,000 physical locations and employed 60,000 people. They controlled the vast majority of the home video market. Meanwhile, an internet startup named Netflix was struggling to survive the dot-com crash. Operating out of a small office with a few dozen employees, they were rapidly burning through their limited cash reserves. By the year 2000, Netflix was nearly out of money. Co-founder Reed Hastings flew to Dallas to offer Blockbuster his company for $50 million. Blockbuster executives laughed at the pitch and declined the offer. Surviving meant abandoning the idea of competing on retail space. To stay alive, the startup had to find a completely different method to operate the rental business, avoiding physical storefronts entirely. Blockbuster relied heavily on penalizing its own customers. A significant portion of their revenue came directly from charging late fees when people failed to return physical cassettes and DVDs on schedule. Netflix introduced a flat monthly subscription rate. Customers paid a single fee and could keep the discs for as long as they wanted, without facing any financial penalties for keeping a movie too long. The system still required massive logistical effort. Every transaction depended on the United States Postal Service physically transporting the media from centralized warehouses to individual mailboxes and then back again. Removing the anxiety of late fees broke the habit of driving to a retail store. Customers began to prefer the predictable cost of the mail service, cutting Blockbuster off from its primary source of foot traffic. While retail stores tracked inventory on physical shelves, the online model allowed for something else. Every time a customer logged in, rated a film, or added a title to their queue, the system logged the behavior. Engineers used that data to build a recommendation algorithm. An algorithm is a set of mathematical instructions used by a computer to recognize patterns and make decisions. This system matched specific viewer profiles to niche movie titles to maximize the total time users spent watching. By consistently suggesting highly relevant titles, the system created a continuous loop of consumption. As long as the digital queue was full of targeted recommendations, the user had a reason to pay the monthly fee. Blockbuster viewed its thousands of physical locations as an unassailable advantage. They continued investing in expensive retail leases, while their competitor operated entirely in the digital background. A system running on predictive software requires very little overhead to scale. It moves faster and adapts quicker than an operation burdened by rent, by physical inventory, and thousands of retail employees. By 2007, physical media was reaching its operational limit. Even though mailing discs was generating consistent, high revenue, the leadership team recognized that the format itself was already moving toward obsolescence. They launched a service to deliver video direct over the internet. Bypassing the postal service entirely, they began transmitting digital files straight to consumer screens. At the time, household broadband speeds were barely fast enough to support sustained video playback. Furthermore, pushing users toward digital delivery actively ate into the profits of their highly successful mail operation. The established giant could not make a similar leap. Shifting entirely online meant Blockbuster would have to close their stores and lay off thousands of workers, a move their executives refused to make. Long-term survival often means deliberately tearing down your primary source of income. If you hesitate to replace your own outdated model, a competitor will eventually do it for you. Millions of consumers rapidly abandoned the habit of browsing physical aisles. The immediate gratification of clicking a button replaced the entire Friday night ritual of visiting the video store. In 2010, the former giant filed for bankruptcy. Billions of dollars in annual revenue disappeared, leaving 9,000 retail locations entirely vacant. The same small operation that had been dismissed in a Dallas boardroom a decade earlier had dismantled the prevailing retail ecosystem. With the physical rental market dead, the victor stood alone. They held near total control over how people consumed home entertainment in the digital space. For a brief period, they operated without any serious digital competitors, enjoying rapid subscriber growth and soaring corporate valuations. But a structural weakness remained. They controlled the delivery mechanism, but the actual television shows and films belonged to external studios. The legacy studios in Los Angeles realized they were licensing their most valuable assets to a platform that was actively replacing them. These entertainment conglomerates began pulling their content back to build rival platforms. Companies with decades of intellectual property started constructing their own digital infrastructure. Taking down a retail chain was just the initial skirmish. By proving the viability of internet distribution, the streaming pioneer forced the oldest and wealthiest content creators on Earth into a fight for survival. Netflix had just destroyed Blockbuster. By 2011, their leadership felt invincible, but that overconfidence led them into a dead end. Netflix decided to separate their physical DVD deliveries from their digital streaming service. For millions of users, that internal shift resulted in an overnight price increase of 60%. The backlash was instantaneous. Over 1 million paying subscribers canceled their accounts in a single quarter. But those cancellations exposed a deeper vulnerability. Netflix did not actually own the films or television shows on its platform. They were simply renting them from the traditional studios out in Los Angeles. This dependency carried a specific risk. If those traditional studios decided to revoke their licensing agreements, the Netflix library would evaporate overnight. Winning back customers was only half the battle. Leadership realized they were living on borrowed time in a house they didn't own. To secure its future, Netflix had to manufacture its own product. They had to transition from a tech distributor into a full-fledged production house. Their first move was a 9-figure bet on a show called House of Cards. Instead of filming a test pilot, they committed $100 million upfront for 2 full seasons, relying entirely on user viewing data to justify the cost. The stakes were absolute. If the show failed to find an audience, that lost capital would likely push the company into bankruptcy. The gamble worked. Under CEO Reed Hastings, the company evolved from a Silicon Valley startup into a high-stakes Hollywood player. That success triggered a total pivot. Netflix immediately accelerated its output, greenlighting original series at a pace the industry had never seen. They engineered a string of global hits, from Stranger Things and Narcos to the record-breaking success of Squid Game. While legacy studios spent a fraction on digital, Netflix scaled its annual content budget to $17 billion. They used that capital to build an impenetrable wall of original IP that no rival could ever reclaim. By securing its own pipeline, Netflix shed its reliance on external suppliers. They had successfully transitioned from a tech middleman into a major production house, capable of competing directly with the Hollywood giants. But that rapid expansion forced the old guard of the entertainment industry to react. The legacy media conglomerates finally realized they were losing their audiences. This diagram tracks the industry-wide retaliation. Giants like Disney, Warner Bros., and Apple launched their own platforms and began severing their ties with Netflix, reclaiming their most popular legacy titles. The market splintered. Consumers were no longer choosing a single library. They were caught in a multi-front war for their attention. The very strategy that saved the company in 2011 directly motivated its suppliers to become heavily armed competitors. This line graph shows the culmination of those pressures. In 2022, Netflix reported its first ever loss of subscribers, ending its era of unchallenged growth. The financial impact was devastating. A stock market crash followed, erasing substantial portions of the company's valuation in days. Analysts and critics were quick to declare the streaming pioneer's decline, suggesting the platform had finally hit its limit. Surviving the 2011 crisis only guaranteed the next challenge would be even more intricate, leaving Netflix fighting for its place in the attention economy. This chart shows Netflix's subscriber count in early 2022. After years of growth, the numbers drop off a cliff. Losing subscribers for the first time in a decade, Wall Street analysts wrote their obituaries, convinced the platform hit its ceiling. Executives launched an offensive, cracking down on passwords, adding an ad tier, and raising prices. Watch this chart react. Instead of mass cancellations, these strict policies drove a massive influx of new signups. The line rockets to record highs. By forcing users to pay for their own accounts, Netflix proved a crucial point. They became an indispensable household utility, possessing pricing power to dictate terms without losing their audience. By 2025, victory looks like this: over 325 million global subscribers, a user base the size of the entire United States population. This map transforms into a towering pillar, representing $45 billion in annual revenue, dwarfing every competitor. While Netflix commands this massive revenue stream, the traditional streaming industry remains deeply fragmented. Rival studios burn through cash, struggling for profitability while fighting over remaining slivers of the audience. The traditional streaming war has a clear victor. Yet, while they secured a television monopoly, the actual battlefield of human entertainment relocated entirely. Former CEO Reed Hastings recognized this shift early on. He realized that the legacy Hollywood studios trying to build their own streaming apps were no longer the primary threat to his company's survival. Platforms like Disney Plus and HBO are certainly rivals, but they are fighting a conventional war in a space Netflix already dominates. The attention economy operates on a simple premise: the only resource that matters is time. In this market, value is measured by how many of a human being's finite waking hours a platform can successfully capture. Under this model, the entities actually stealing screen time from streaming platforms are interactive media. It is the time users spend playing video games or endlessly scrolling through social media feeds on their phones. Netflix's competition is no longer defined as other television networks. Their enemy is literally any activity that stops a person from sitting down on their couch and pressing play. To keep people pressing play, Netflix currently spends upwards of $17 billion every single year financing high-end original Hollywood productions. Contrast that heavy financial burden with their actual modern adversary, TikTok. Or consider the structural mechanics of YouTube. Both of these platforms run on user-generated content. They capture billions of hours of human attention while paying absolutely nothing to produce the videos themselves. Traditional streaming requires a slow, multi-year production cycle, carrying immense financial risk. This is the brutal math of the modern internet. Netflix is engaged in a war of attrition against infinite scrolling platforms that operate with zero content acquisition costs. To survive an ecosystem where attention is constantly fractured, Netflix has to step outside the boundaries of its original business model. Being a platform exclusively for movies and television shows is no longer enough. They are actively expanding into communal, appointment viewing broadcasts. By securing the live streaming rights to properties like WWE Sports Entertainment, they guarantee millions of viewers tuning in simultaneously every week. They are also pushing into interactive media, acquiring development studios and steadily building a premium video game library directly into their mobile app. And they are taking the rare step of moving from digital interfaces into physical reality. The company is constructing massive retail and experiential venues called Netflix House, where fans can eat, shop, and interact with physical recreations of their favorite shows. By layering live sports, gaming, and physical retail onto their streaming service, Netflix is building an interconnected entertainment ecosystem designed to claim a stake in every possible moment of a user's leisure time. We have seen a shift of this magnitude before. Netflix built its entire empire by identifying the flaws in the physical movie rental industry and systematically dismantling Blockbuster. They convinced the entire world to abandon physical media in favor of digital streaming, establishing the modern behavioral standards for how we consume entertainment. But the defining rule of the technology sector is that the aggressive disruptors of one era usually become the slow-moving, vulnerable incumbents of the next. Netflix won the streaming wars. But as the internet continues to fracture human attention into smaller and smaller pieces, the question remains, can they evolve their empire fast enough, or will the attention economy turn them into the next Blockbuster?
If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. We explore the rise, fall, and hidden stories behind the world's biggest companies.